I entered Pokemon's biggest fan-made tournament with a little lizard no one thinks is good. This is a Pokemon you will rarely ever see in tournament, and many of the best players in the world either put it in the mid or bottom tiers. This Pokemon isn't even one of my favorites. Before I used it, I thought they were like fine, but I used this Pokemon because on the team I made, it had a real and truly unique set of strengths that made it better than any other support. This awesome Pokemon is known as the Toxic Lizard, Salazzle. And this is a story of how I discovered her strength through this super fun and grueling tournament. Before we talk about the poisonous reptile, we have to talk about this whole biggest tournament thing. You may have no idea what this tournament even is. And even if you did, you may not know how absolutely game-changing it was. The Grand Champions Festival is arguably the greatest community-ran tournament of all time. Compared to things like regional championships, international championships, or the world championships hosted every year, this is not hosted by the Pokemon company itself. Instead, it's held by the fans. But if you knew about this tournament's prizing, the people that were in it, or the scale of the tournament, you wouldn't even think that. The Grand Champions Festival is a 6,109 player tournament. I entered an in-person tournament at the start of April called the Orlando Regional Championships. That was huge and it was a blast to be in. But the Grand Champions Festival is over 6 times the size of the people that competed in that tournament. 6 times! The craziest part is that that's just the number of the people that checked in. The amount of people that wanted to play and signed up for the tournament itself was quite literally over 10,000. The host of the tournament himself, Scraw, had to cap it off at 10,000 in order to make the tournament somewhat runnable. And the hilarious part is that that's not even where the crazy things end. Over $10,000 in cash and prizes were given to the best players. The player in first got a whopping $3,000, a custom belt that only that person in the world would have, custom Joy-Cons, and a trip to a cruise that's based around Pokemon battling. Plus, they would have the lifelong prize of winning a tournament that was almost forced to cap the number of players that could play in it. To add on to how crazy the prizing was, you also had many of the coolest figureheads or people in the community join in as either production, commentary, or festival leads. Many of the most known VGC players were in this tournament in some kind of way, either streaming their POV or casting the events. It truly felt like the community as a whole did whatever they could to make this tournament something that's never happened before. Over a year's work of effort to create something magical. Well, this definitely is a tournament we're taking seriously, but here I am using a Pokemon that very little people even bat an eye towards. So why would I do that? To answer this, we need to start with a different Pokemon, Colette, as she is the core of this story and the most important reason why I ended up playing Salazzle. Colette is one of my favorite Pokemon, which is easy to say now that it's so broken. But I actually cared about the Pokemon when it came out, back in Pokemon X and Y, when she met up with AZ at the end of that game. I love how stupidly powerful she was rumored to be. I love that she un-KOable on the special side when she gets a few Calm Mind boosts. And I love how this power in bulk was complemented by her strength and adorableness in Pokemon Legends EA, the first game where you actually get to catch the fairy Pokemon. Once I did catch her, I immediately decided I wanted to run Calm Mind. Calm Mind was already one of the most popular ways to use the Flower Lady at the time, and since that set's all about being big and bulky, I chose to start there. After Calm Mind, I went for a lesser played move, Draining Kiss, since it sounded really frustrating for the opponents to try and break through Colette, both at the Calm Mind boost and massive heals with Draining Kiss. But there is one Pokemon that has been topping the usage charts since the start of the game, and is absolutely one I would need to respect for the set, Sneasler. Sneasler's Dire Claw doesn't care about any Calm Mind boost, since it's physical, and will one-shot most standard Floette with the Dire Claw. Keyword, most. I chose to drop a lot of my speed, which I was okay with since my whole idea was to be a bulky Floette, and put a massive amount of points in my defense and HP. These points gave me a chance to survive that dreaded Sneasler's Dire Claw, but I'm going to need a lot more to play around the Weasel. To do this, I chose one of the greatest competitive Pokemon out there, Garchomp. Garchomp's ground typing is exactly what Floette needs to sponge Sneasler's Dire Claw hits as well as hit back with powerful earthquakes. Most Sneasels out there will not be able to take a single one of these because it takes an ungodly amount of HP and defense points to do so. Floette and Garchomp are two Pokemon that would stick to the first and second versions of the team, but a split timeline opens up. I created two versions of this team, and the second one is the team I'll go on to use in the Grand Champions Festival featuring Salazzle. On that first version though, I had a collection of Pokemon that flowed like butter when it came to choosing. I wanted another mode to play in case the bulky mode with Draenicus Floette felt really bad in a certain matchup. Boom! Charizard Y and their son to mow down opponents that made Floette suffer. Since Floette, Charizard, and Garchomp all had speeds about in the middle, it made sense to run a Pokemon with a move that could buff all their speeds. Boom! Scizor with Tailwind that doubled everyone's speed for 4 turns. Scizor, compared to the more popular Aerodactyl, also has great defensive typing with the team, letting me both tank hits and increase everyone's zoominess to new heights. While this core is great, I wanted a Pokemon that I could bring with Floette without needing to Mega Evolve, and I wanted a way to support Floette getting her Calm Minds up safely. Boom! Sinistcha. We can switch in, heal Floette, and click Life Steal to heal even more, or use Rage Powder to redirect a scary move away from the team's queen. But this is what led to the team eventually having a second version. No one really plays off of Charizard Y's son. Floette can't use it, Scizor is actively harmed by it, and Garchomp doesn't really love or hate it. On this first version of the team, I chose to play into the sun on the 6th slot, while also making sure the slot would give tools to Floette in case I brought them with her. Incineroar! Incineroar, being a fire type, meant its Flare Blitzes would do quite a lot in the sun. Well, this team looks pretty good, so why would I swap it around in the first place? Well, besides the lack of Pokemon that like the sun, I learned an interesting idea that, for better or worse, I wanted to follow. I wanted to have a team where both of my Mega Pokemon could be brought to the same team without them being compromised. I'll take the team I currently have, Floette and Charizard. I can bring those two together and not Mega Evolve Floette, but with how this Floette's playstyle is built around her bulk and survival, plus with me not running the higher powered base attacks in Moonblast or Light of Ruin at the time, it doesn't make it a great idea. Since I had a little Pokemon to actually play around the sun, I swapped Aerodactyl in for both Charizard and Scizor, thus beginning the second version of the team. But the group ends up having a massive problem. It cannot hit bulky steel types once Floette's down. This is because many of these Pokemon have ways to increase their physical defense stats. And with 3 of my 4 Pokemon being physical attackers, that can quickly bite me in the butt. So I chose to look for special attacking options that fit the flow of the team, and that's where I struck gold. Salazzle has a really unique set of strengths that helped out with everything I needed for the team. First, it's a special attacker with access to overheat, meaning it can put out good damage and great damage into bulky steel types. Next, it can actually outspeed Sneasler. Sneaslers that don't run Jolly at least. This is super important because Salazzle can actually fake out Sneasler the first turn they're both out, then overheat for crazy good damage into it. Plus, because the metagame at the time called for Sneasers to go for more bulk, I would go on and outspeed nearly every single Sneasler I fought, both on the ladder and in the tournament. But you've probably never got to see Salazzle in a competitive game, at least not in Pokemon Champions. So it's time we break down the run and show off a few rounds where Salazzle really shined. I want to go through 3 games where Salazzle did pretty good, not that well, or did amazing. All to show what using the Pokemon was like on this tournament run. The first one is game 2 of my round 3 set. I led Salazzle and Aerodactyl into their Aerodactyl and King Gambit. Salazzle has a lot of pressure at the start of this turn because of Focus Sash and her choice of moves. I can fake out the opposing Aerodactyl and prevent a Tailwind. I can Will-O-Wisp their Gambits, which would burn them and cripple their damage. Or I can overheat the King Gambit for huge damage. Overheat not only goes off, but it lets me one-hit KO the King Gambit. Once Floette's in, I tank her Dazzling Gleam really well, thanks to my amazing typing for dealing with fairy types. Plus I get a Taunt and a Will-O-Wisp before going down. Looking back at this, I would say doing a second overheat over that Will-O-Wisp would have gave me a better chance of getting the win, but overall, Salazzle's impact this game was absolutely felt. But of course, the Lanky Lizard isn't perfect. In game 2 of my round 1, I led Salazzle as well as Floette into their Incineroar and Rotom. The main problem with this is the type matchup. I actually match it pretty well into Incineroar, having the faster fake out and being able to taunt if I really want to predict a parting shot. But I'm fighting a Rotom who has Hydro Pump as an extremely powerful move into me. I need to be able to both limit what the opposing Incineroar can do into my Floette while trying to limit what this Rotom Wash can do into my Lizard. I struggle to find the best defensive play in the face of this washing machine, and they're eventually able to drop my Garchomp's attack in half and land really good damage with their Floettes. The main reason they were able to get this damage was the lead. I actually let the same set of Pokemon in the game before, while in this one, they adapted to that lead by running that Rotom Incineroar duo. It would be best for me to play around that by changing my lead almost each game. But finally, this is where the Squamate truly got the shine. Game 2 of my round 2 set. I led my Salazzle and Floette into their Frostlass and Milotic. Salazzle has crazy agency here. I can choose to fake out the Milotic, overheat the Frostlass for a 1-hit KO, or very devious third option, taunt the Milotic. The best part is that I not only tank the Mega Frostlass's Blizzard, I not only force the Milotic out since it can't do much once it gets taunted, but I also prevent the Sylveon that swapped in from using Yawn, which could have really messed with my pace of battling. With just my moveset and a good lead, I forced significant pressure on my opponent's Pokemon, and they had to hinge on Blizzard's chip damage or freeze to maybe try and handle things. But the fun doesn't end there. Later in the game, I actually get Salazzle in position to nail a taunt onto Milotic when it can't switch out anymore. This absolutely shuts down what this Milotic wanted to do, making cleaning up this game extremely easy. Overall, I had a blast while playing this competition and making this really fun video. If you want to see more content like this, check out my Mega Clefable video where I reached Master Ball tier at the start of the game, playing one of my most favorite Pokemon ever.